Hariom to everyone. Welcome back to our exploration of the philosophy of life, philosophy of yoga, how the rishis, they looked at life and what their abilities were to control their minds, make their minds their best friend. And that's why the philosophy is so relevant for us, because each and every one of us, we want to make our minds our best friend. So I don't think I've come across someone who says, yeah, I want my mind to be my enemy. No, we don't even have to ask the mind to be our enemy. It becomes it. So everyone wants to turn their mind into their friend. So these rishis, they had all these amazing insights and techniques they left behind to help us to get a quiet mind, a peaceful mind, and connect to our higher self. And we're coming to the end of book one. So beautiful. He's describing, Patanjali is describing the higher rungs of self-realizations. So we get to explore that part today. And like I've explained, some of us, we might have experienced one of the lower rungs of self-realization, and it lasts for like maybe a week, a month, a few months. Then maybe we experience a second higher rung of self-realization to a certain degree. But then we ended where he explains, why don't we stay on those platforms? Is because sometimes arrogance comes into the consciousness and it brings us back down. So the yogis are understanding their spiritual growth is like a creeper, is like a tree. So you want to make sure while we're watering the tree of our spiritual evolution, we don't water the weeds as well. Otherwise, the weeds can sometimes get stronger and choke the tree, kill the tree. So the yogis understand arrogance is one of those weeds that kind of prevent us from moving forward. So the Patanjali explaining, we can still fall back from these realizations. And before we know it, how did I come back so far? So arrogance, one, and misuse of our abilities. So when God gives us an ability, if we use it for the right purpose, it just gets stronger and stronger. And if you misuse your gift, you lose the gift as well. So misuse of our mental power, we lose our realizations. Arrogance allows us to lose our realizations, and we forget where we couldn't even remember where we once were. So we're here, and so the yoga culture is it's a beautiful culture that it's locked in with certain qualities. You can't make a bluff that you are spiritually evolved by your attire. It's not by your attire, because you wear a saffron robe, or maybe because your locks are the longest, or maybe because you're covered with ash, or maybe because you only live in a loincloth. It's not, all these are externals. It has nothing to really do with the transformation inside. the structure of the astral body, the mind, the intellect, the ego connecting to the higher self. So the externals, yes, they help us, the way you dress and things, but nothing to do with that. It's about the inner qualities. So when you meet someone who is doing some spiritual practice, some sadhana, steady, 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 you'll see their evolution. It'll come from within. You meet them and their words are gentle. They're empathetic, compassionate, and humility. So that allows the plant to keep growing, keep growing. And as soon as we get too full of ourselves, we take a few steps back. So I'm pretty sure everyone in the room has seen yourself. You evolve like this, yes? 1 day, 2 days, and then every one of us have seen ourselves regress a little. So that's normal because that will happen. So Patanjali is indirectly warning us, this will happen, that with this mantra where he says, we just read it last, he says, all these samadhis, which he just before, he says, are sabija, with seed, which could bring one back into bondage or mental disturbance. So when Patanjali is writing that statement, he's not just writing it theoretically, he experienced it. He saw himself evolving, and then he saw himself came back as well. So if it's happening to him and he can write about it, you can just look at us as well, like, oh, yes, as we evolve, we have to be very careful. We'll see ourselves regress a little, go and continue, regress a little. So that is a natural process. So we don't get too hard on ourselves, but we recognize it. Oh, my arrogance came in, my false ego came in. Okay, I have to purify this. So we pick ourselves up. So the next one, he says, in the purity of Nirvichar Samadhi, the supreme self shines. This is Ritambar Prajna, or the absolute true consciousness. So the statement, the absolute pure consciousness, it makes us, he's telling us that me, you, each and every one of us is a pure spiritual being. Free, we're all in our pure self. We're free from every perception that we think we are. So even the perception that I am a male, that falls away. I am Belizean, that falls away. I am 45 years old, that falls away. So all these perceptions fall away, and what resides, you get to a state, he says, you keep going, you'll get to, you're just the pure spiritual being whom we are. And it's a remembrance of it. I think Paulo Coelho made this statement clearly in one of his books. He said, and so in tune with Vedic culture, Vedic thought, he says, we are a spiritual being having a material experience, something like that. So it's the same thing the yogis are teaching, that we perceive things through these material senses, and then we get attached to certain things and name and form. Now, when all these fall away, when all the attachment fall away, what will start to manifest is just the pure spiritual being with spiritual senses. And with the spiritual senses, you refine everything. It's the spiritual, the yogis said the spiritual being has spiritual eyes, spiritual ears. Like right now, it's not, these eyes are organs that allows the Atma to pick up slower vibration in this dimension. But the Atma is the one who is really seeing. It's not the eyes. It's not the brain that's seeing. It's not the eyes. It's the spiritual self. My eardrum is a frequency that was developed to bring strong vibration in this dimension so the Atma could connect to this dimension. But the Atma has spiritual ears, spiritual eyes, spiritual tongue, but so now when all our senses become totally spiritualized, he says here, this is Ritambar Prajna. In other words, you are residing in your true spiritual self. And this won't even have the thought. There's no, not even the shadow of false ego comes around the spiritual self. And we were once there because we're a spiritual being from a spiritual domain. And somehow we came into this material domain. And so we're just caught up. So the yogis recognize that there's this pure love that exists with the spiritual self. And along with this pure love, which is there is also free will, the independence to love or to not love, free will. So we cannot force someone to love us. If you try to force someone to love you, it will never manifest. So similarly, God is not forcing us to love him. We have to execute our free will to fall in love with God. And it's described, the yogis understand, Vyasadeva explains, as soon as we want to exercise our free will separate from God, we're in this material dimension. And you can see most people, when we get covered, we're trying to be the Lord and Master of all we survey. So as soon as we purify that aspect, where the love, we're using that free will of the pure love that's there in us to love God, then, the false ego falls away. And then we start to see every living entity as a spiritual being as well. And we can connect to every living entity with pure love. And we can see that's, we've come so far from that where we once were, that we look around today in the world and we see all the secondary emotions come out, yes, after love. And it just rolls and it gets emotions in the mode of goodness, right? Then it goes to emotions in the mode of passion, and it goes to emotion in the mode of ignorance. So in Kali Yuga, the age we're living in, it's described the emotions are primarily in the mode of rajas and tamas. A lot of people are acting out of energy, rajasic, and tamasic in ignorance. It's rare someone is connecting to emotions in sattva gun, the mode of goodness. So we have like you can see the virus situation we have. It's allow people to then contemplate cleanliness on a whole different level. So indirectly, the virus is allowing people to be more clean, wash their hands, wash their, just so sometimes we need something like that to trigger, the high level of cleanliness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of anger and frustration. And so the yogis understand we cannot solve those material tension that we see going on with our fellow human brothers with another material solution. It needs a spiritual solution. It needs love. So it's amazing that we're studying this part of the sutras with the tension on our planet right now, because the yogis understand each and every one of us have this pure love within us. And this is when the pure self shines. And when that pure love comes out, it's uninterrupted. So it's always there, and it's unmotivated. It's continuous. That pure love is there in our heart. So when he says, this is Ritambar Pragna, or the absolute true consciousness. He goes on, he says, this special truth is totally different from knowledge gained by hearing, study of the scripture, or inference. Indirectly, Patanjali is telling us this high, pure, loving self that we can connect to. No books, you can't read about it in books. So in other words, books are only going to take us so far. So Patanjali is telling us the book he's writing for us, which we are studying, can only take our consciousness to this level. You can hear a lecture. The lectures from another spiritual development and will only take you to a certain level. The true, when it gets deeper and deeper, you understand that God is unlimited. So one book cannot categorize God, or one person God speaks through cannot fully categorize that amazing vastness of divinity. And that's why I love this mantra. Is one of my favorite mantras when I study the sutras, where he says here that this special truth is totally different from knowledge gained by hearing or studying any scriptural book or inference. It makes you understand, wow, here's someone who's writing a thesis, a book for us, but it's telling us this book will only take each and every one of us so far. Each and every one of us are beyond what this book can teach us. So what is he saying is that his experiences he had from controlling his mind, from freeing his mind from all the mental modifications, he experienced so much spiritual that I can only put so much in this book. And so he's like, oh, whoa. So that makes you think that, yes, when people try to say all spiritual is in one book, we're trying to limit divinity. So it's beyond that, you know. So the books are there, yes, to help us. We can get inspiration and see the techniques they leave for us. But as we start to grow spiritually, we're going to have experiences which don't even exist in books on this planet, but it's still there, but it's just never recorded. So I was like, when I remember coming across this meditation, I was like, wow, okay. Because, you know, being brought up as a Christian, you're taught that there's everything is in this book, there's one book, but that limits us and limit divinity. So don't limit us, don't limit yourself as you go deep. So that's why when I read this, I was like, wow, here's someone, he's showing us so many techniques to connect to our higher self, but at the same time, humble enough to tell us, my book, this book that I'm writing will only take you so far. He didn't try and say, yes, this book is the all in all, you just need this book. It's no, beyond it. It's like, wow. So this is a yogi, someone who is really, you can see he's experiencing divinity on a high, pure platform. He's writing this book not to become recognized. He's already self-realized. He's not looking for followers. He's not looking for, you know, oh, no. He's giving this wisdom out of people. He's being truthful to his point that, hey, a book will only take you so far. And then the next one he says, the next part of it, he says, the impression produced by this samadhi, when you're recognizing your true spiritual being with your spiritual senses, he says, the impressions produced by this samadhi wipes out all other impressions. What does that mean? It means when you have your spiritual impressions from the self, it will purify and wipe out all material impressions. So the material senses, these become so spiritualized, the senses, they don't pull you anymore. And if they don't pull you anymore, there's only one thing that can be happening. Your senses became spiritualized. You cannot falsely say, oh, I'm going to control my tongue now. If you don't, like someone says, some people, like I used this example before. Some people, they come, oh, I want to be a vegetarian. No, do you know how to cook vegetarian? If you don't replace it with something, it'll be very hard to just live on leaves and nuts and berries. So initially, you need to give it something to replace it. So the yogis understood the material impressions that we have will go away fully, not even a seed of it is there when the pure spiritual being with the spiritual impressions of the spiritual domain where we came from overrides all the material impressions. And that's a beautiful sankalpa to have, that we want to recognize who we truly spiritually are and to connect to that true spiritual being whom we are, free from this pulling from the senses. Because we all know, we see it every day. The senses are strong, but the senses also will dwindle, get old, and finish and transform. So we are something superior to it. So don't give in to the senses. But this phrase, don't give in to the senses, is only half of it. Don't give in to the senses mean you're going to replace it with spiritual experiences. So when we connect to our high, true spiritual self, it's not like it's a negation thing. No, you're negating the material, but then you're replacing it with the spiritual experience. The spiritual domain opens to you. You can start to see spiritual realm right here, and you act from that dimension. And that's why from time to time, we see someone as they evolve, they reach to that such a pure spiritual plane. They feel it, everything. They can see everything in that spiritual vision, and they act from that platform. So we have that ability in us. Patanjali is telling us it's there. So it's a nice sankalpa to have, to put in, wow, I would want to realize who my spiritual self is. So the phrase yogis they sometimes use is self-realization. Means, wow, let me go on this journey to figure out who I am beyond all these designations. Because all the misinformation that I think that who I am, it just creates tension with everything else. The only way all the tension on the planet will go away is when we're connecting on a spiritual platform. The only way the tension in my mind, body will go away is when I can spiritualize my mind, spiritualize my senses. When I spiritualize all the elements, all the atoms. So that's what will make us peaceful. And that's how he ends this beautiful chapter. He says, when even this impression is wiped out, every impression is totally wiped out, and there is nibija or seedless samadhi. So concludes the sutras of book 1. So he's telling us, he started off this whole book 1. He says that yoga starts by you planting a sankalpa in the mind that you want to make your mind become peaceful, and that when your mind becomes calm, the cessation of the mental modification, you will get a glimpse of your true self. The true self resides in its nature. So that's how he starts the book 1. And then he goes through different things. These are the obstacles you're going to face. These are the issues. And then he ends book 1 with coming back to that same sankalpa. So when you're abiding in your true self, when your mind has become peaceful, there's no more material desires, only spiritual desires. So it's a very, I'm not there, but it's an aspiration I have. I've seen people who were able to manifest it, get to that plane. So I'm like, okay, it's humanly possible. The soul, the Atma, the spiritual being who we are, can actually purify our mind to get to that place, to allow us to resonate with that first emotion rather than the second, tertiary emotions that come out of us. That pure emotion of love using the spiritual senses. So this is how he ends book 1. And book 2, we'll start that next week. He starts, like I said, normally a yogi, they start off with giving us step first, then the ultimate practice later. Here, Patanjali in book 1 establishes what the goal of yoga is, to realize who you are, that you are a divine spiritual being free from matter. Now in book 2, he's going to give us techniques of how to help ourselves go. He already gave us some glimpses in book 1, but now he's going to give us a lot of practices. So book 2 is called the sadhana part, or the practice part of how the yogi eat, how the yogi sleep, how the yogi, so many little techniques to help us to just try and make the mind peaceful and allow that high spiritual force to spiritualize through the ego, spiritualize the intellect, spiritualize the mind, spiritualize the space element, spiritualize the air element in us, spiritualize the fire element in us, spiritualize the water element in us, and spiritualize the earth element. So this amazing micro universe can become totally spiritualized because we are within a spiritual universe, and there's a spiritual vibration around. We just have to tap into it. So that's how he ends book 1. So let's meditate on it, go into it. Let's stretch the legs out, wiggle the ankles, and get into a nice, comfortable seated posture. Bring the palms on the knees, touch the tip of the thumbs, tip of the index fingers. Close the eyes softly. Bring the awareness to the breath moving in and out of the nostrils. As you're aware of your breath, your mind naturally starts to get quieter and quieter. The tension from the past or the future gets weakening in the mind as the mind is in the present. Still in the body. Take your awareness to the right foot, toes to the heel. The right foot is still. To the left foot is steady. To the entire right leg, toes passing the calf, the knee, the thigh to the right hip girdle. The entire right leg is immovable. To the entire left leg, toes to the hip. The entire left leg is stable. To the pelvic floor, the glutes, the lower back, the front of the pelvis. The entire pelvic floor is cemented. To the entire back, from the glutes to the shoulders, the entire back is still. Take your awareness to the right hand, fingertips to the wrist, right hand is rigid. To the left hand is solid. To the entire right arm, fingertips passing the wrist, the forearm, the elbow, the upper arm to the right shoulder blade. The entire right arm is immovable. To the entire left arm, fingertips to shoulder, is stable. Take your awareness to the neck is motionless. To the head is completely still. Take your awareness to the whole body. Imagine the whole body is like a statue. As time goes on, more and more, the physical body moves into stillness more and more. Let's quiet the mind a little bit more. Bring the mind back to your amazing breath at the entrance of the nostrils and identify the slight temperature change of the breath. The incoming breath is slightly cooler. The outgoing breath is slightly warmer. quieten the mind a little bit more, I want you to identify the 4 parts of the breath. There's the inhalation, followed by the split-second retention inside, followed by an exhalation, followed by a split-second retention outside, followed by an inhalation again. Keep witnessing the 4 parts of the breath now. I want you to equalize the 4 parts of the breath. Move with me, my pace. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath. Continue this ratio. If counts of 4 is too strenuous for your lungs, decrease it to counts of 3. If counts of 4 is too easy for your lungs, increase it to counts of 5. But don't strain the lungs. Your pace, equalizing the 4 parts of the breath. After you complete the next exhalation, bring the breath back to normal breathing. And as you witness your amazing breath moving in and out, you recognize this breath has been your constant companion in this lifetime. We all have a lot of companions who are very important, our family members, our friends, but none of them are constantly with us like our amazing breath. Hence the rishis like Patanjali, they explain, if we contemplate the breath, our true spiritual nature will start to manifest because that breath is taking place in the present moment. As you fall in love with the breath, the yogis, they don't just acknowledge the breath, they fall in love with the breath because the breath is teaching us the spiritual philosophy of our higher self. the rational human mind can recognize we need the breath to survive. Without this breath, everything will shut down. Yet this breath we breathe in, yogis recognize it. It's sometimes solar and it is sometimes lunar. Without moving, I want you to take your awareness to the entrance of the nostrils and see if you can identify which nostril is allowing a greater volume of air to move in and out. Is it my right nostril or is it the left nostril? Just sensitize the mind. The yogis recognize if we're breathing dominantly through the right nostril, the right hemisphere, that's the solar side, sun of the body. And then if we're breathing through the left side, that's the lunar side, the moon. The yogis understood our breath will switch from nostril to nostril throughout the day. And for 4 minutes, both nostrils are evenly open. And when those 4 minutes are there, the yogis recognize we can tap into, leave the body designation behind and connect to the true spiritual nature whom we are. When the breath is moving through both nostrils, we get these higher realization that the breath is neither male, it's neither female. The breath is neither nationality. The thing that keeps us alive is always existing. Means the soul, the atma, the spiritual being is always existing. And the yogis get that realization that the breath is an expression of God's love to us. And this love is uninterrupted. We're always breathing. This love is unmotivated. And as you start to recognize God's divinity in the breath, that natural love we have in ourselves starts to come out. And one day we will realize our true spiritual self, free from the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, free from the deep-rooted conception of being 5, 5, 5, 10, free from the conception that I am 44 years old. We are beyond these designation of the atoms. And when that love enters the heart, the true spiritual senses are awakened and it replaces our material senses. Everything becomes spiritualized around us. And we don't have to try and be spiritual. We are already spiritual beings. We're trying so hard to forget our nature by trying to become a doctor, a lawyer, a this, and that. And as soon as we try to attain these material designations that we identify, it creates tension. So if we want all the tension to fall away from our inner environment, we got to replace the temperate designation that we have for our body and replace it with our true spiritual domain. As we relate to the world, we have all these designations. The yogis recognize that, but then spiritualize those relationships, spiritualize our aspects, how we interrelate with the world outside. And that's the only way we can spiritualize them, if we are connecting to every living entity with the force of the Atma, which is pure love. It will remove anger in us. It will remove frustration in the mind. It will replace it with compassion, tolerance, patience. And we've met humans who've raised to that high frequency before. We've heard of humans, so they were able to tap into it. Means we can also tap into it. So as your mind becomes quiet, I want you to plant in the Chidakas, the center behind your forehead plant. I want to recognize who I am truly spiritually. And for the next few minutes, just sit in stillness with your breath and recognize divinity right with you. We're always around divinity. God is always with us. We just got to quiet and listen. Experience our breath, experience divinity with us. As you inhale, you can recognize that that is God's love for us. We're in this universe depending on the sun and the moon. We have a full moon soon coming up. That's God's expression of love to us. Experiencing God's love everywhere. And as you start to evolve, recognize you are a unique spiritual being. And the way you're going to experience divinity is unique to you. No books can describe it fully. No lectures. You and divinity have a unique relationship. Recognize you cannot limit divinity to a number of words or a number of pages beyond. We cannot limit our true spiritual self to what our passports say or to what our birth certificates say. That's just for the body with the atoms, with the elements. Know that you are beyond those. And when you start to recognize this higher frequency of yourself, then we want to be ambassadors of this higher self. The planet needs an example of spiritual evolutionists. We can be an example for our fellow brothers and sisters who are caught up with the modes of rajas, passion, tamas, ignorance. We empathize with them and just be an example. You don't have to force anyone, just live your life on a spiritual plane of love and people will feel it. And by rubbing off, it'll rub off close to them and they'll transform. Just as we evolve by exploring Patanjali's wisdom, we can evolve to that platform as well. Our planet needs example of spiritual evolutionists. Take one last deep, loving breath. Exhale slowly. Move the fingers slowly. Bring the palms to the heart. Lower the head to your unlimited self, towards divinity in your heart, your closest friend who is unlimited. No words can describe it, no book, no, can't fully put on this high spiritual force. Namaste. Lift the head, open the eyes. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you all so much for exploring book one with us so far. It's such a beautiful evolution, you know. Each and every one of you that, you know, we are this dynamic being. You can't, and everyone tries to label someone, right? Oh, you're 5, 6, no, we are beyond that. Yeah, we try to label God, no, can't, beyond. So try and live from that high place, powerful place of love, and or spiritual senses come out, and then people will get inspired. It's always nice to be an example, right, for others. Thank you all so much for inspiring me. It took us, what, almost 3 months to get through book one. Thank you all so much for inspiring us. It's nice to go through it like this. Like I say in teacher trainings, I get 3 hours to teach the whole Yoga Sutras. Right? It's like, and then it just goes over people's head. And, oh yeah, that's a good book. And then we forget it. But when you meditate on it, it's like, oh wow, this is what he's saying. This is what he's saying. So thank you for inspiring, and have a beautiful evening. I look forward to seeing you all again as we continue. Adios. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Yogi Charu.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Yogi Charu.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Yogi Charu.
Thank you, Helen Anzelin.
Thank you, Yogi Charu.
Thank you, Helen Lee. Mahalo Shifumi. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Nan. Mahalo, Greg. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you, Basha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Yogi.
Thank you, Rosa.
Yogi Charu.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Yogi Charu. Book one.
Woohoo!
Yes, book
Woo!
one. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Yumiko.
Yogi Charu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Hari Om. Yogi Charu.
Adios. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you, Hariam.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Rosa. That's it. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Charu.
Beautiful.